Talk Radio.
Mi chiamo Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit Neye Ojira Da Medinde Odwirafo Kwesi Nehem Ptah Akhan Akwamuman Amaruka Atifi Odwirafo. That means greetings to all Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit people, meaning Africans, black people. Today is Ojira Day. My name is Odwirafo Kwesi Nehem Ptah Akhan, Odwirafo of the Akwamu Nation in North America. Yet I say we thank you for tuning in to another show, another broadcast. We're going to be posting some links in the chat room. First link, you can go to the NHOMA page of our website to get to the UBEN-HYENG, the Ancestral Jurisdiction. The Ancestral Summons. And we're posting that in the chat room right now. If you have a question or a comment, you must log into the chat room in order to make that, post a question or comment. If you have a question or a comment on the phone line, then you just hit the number 1, and you'll be able to make that, we'll be able to call. We'll see that your hand is raised, and we'll be able to call on you. We just want to send out a couple of more messages right quick, letting some of the other people know we started the broadcast. Okay. All right, so the UBEN-HYENG, the Ancestral Summons, we'll look at that. Also, you can Google, and you can, there are a number of different places where you can find this. I'm going to put a link here to a PDF. There's a specific translation and transliteration. This particular PDF just has the translation of the particular text, often called the Famine Stela. It's from the text Legends of the Egyptian Gods by E.A. Wallace Budge. This particular section, A Legend of the Divinity Kunwem and of the 7 Years Famine. This particular PDF is just a PDF where they just simply took that whole text of his and put it in a PDF format. They did not include the transliterations or the images of the Mendutu. All they did was copy the translation of the text and put it just on a big PDF file. So we're going to link that one so you can read along with it. We'll post that in the chat room. So you can see an image there. Well, not an image, but you can download the actual document. And I think those are the two main links. That's only two links you really need right now. And let me just send out one more. Let me just make sure. Now, one more message. And if you have any questions in the meantime, of course, you can post them in the chat at any time. All right. And of course, you can always ask those questions. Get your questions ready on the phone lines as well. All right. So, so before we get started, of course, the archive from yesterday, which the Akhan Nanasom, Ancient, Authentic, Akhan, Ancestral Religion, our broadcast from yesterday, the archive is up, and we dealt with Yonkonpon and Yonkonton, Ra and Raet. So you can check that out tomorrow. We'll be back on for Egua Marketplace. Our guest will be Baba Jason. He is the owner of Just Right Technology. So we'll have a great discussion with Baba Jason. We'll talk about his business, talk about the classes that he has, the trainings that he has, and his cultural approach to teaching information technology through his business. So again, that will be Egua Marketplace Day tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern, of course, on this station as well, on this broadcast channel. So, and the archives of that also will be typically available immediately within about a half an hour after the show. All of our archives, we have about 37 shows, broadcasts that are archived that you can access at any time, just going to our website, to the Blog Talk Radio channel, to our channel, and you can download those at any time. All right. And I think I need to send out one more message, then we're going to get started. Just want to make sure some of the other people who weren't on the original message piece, I want to make sure they got that. But you can check out the information on the Famine Stela. We're going to get into a number of details on that particular stela. There's a lot of information. We're going to focus on an aspect of it tonight to clear up some misconceptions just about the nature of offerings and sacrifice and how this information relates specifically to Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people today. So these ancient texts carry these principles and concepts demonstrating what's actually going on, the dynamics of our community, what's going on with us today, and how to resolve specific issues. These things manifest in cycles, same shaping forces that govern events back thousands of years ago are the same shaping forces, the Obosom, the forces in nature that govern events today. So just as we've dealt with things in the past, just like the sun is still shining today, we're fed by the sun, we're strengthened by the sun, we take note of the movements of the sun, we live in harmony with that. Oceans, rivers, the earth mother, the change in the seasons, we live in harmony with that. These are the shaping forces that govern our lives on a day-to-day basis, just as they did, of course, physically thousands of years ago. The same is true today. Same thing spiritually, which affects us individually and as a group socially as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. The way we interface with the forces in nature that also govern our own souls, our own Akhan, and the decisions we make in relationship to our understanding of these shaping forces in creation. Those dynamics are the same as they were in the past. They're the same as they are now. When we get in harmony with the forces that govern creation, which also means the forces that govern us as individuals, and our thoughts, intentions, and actions, when we're living in harmony with order, when we get in alignment with them, then we can restore order to our existence. When we get out of alignment with them, then we have problems. That's true now. That's always been true in the past. And these texts that we talk about in from ancient Kemet and Khanit prove that. They demonstrate that. They show the inner workings of the forces in nature in relationship to us as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, how to identify and solve problems, bring resolution to issues that we're trying to bring resolution to so that we can move forward and function harmoniously with one another as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people and reestablish our culture, our civilization, and defend our civilization that we've reestablished from our enemies, the whites and their offspring. So let's look at, all right, so let's look at the beginning of the text. You can look at the link we just put up, which is the PDF version of the Famine Stela. Now, first, the Stela revolves around, a number of different things. The major divinity that is spoken of in the Stela is Kunwem, often pronounced Kunwem or Khnum. The whites and their offspring didn't understand how to pronounce the name. When they transliterate the name, they typically simply use the consonants. So the KH symbol, Medut symbol, the K sound, the N sound, the Medut for the letter N, the Medut for the letter M. Sometimes they will also use the Medut for the letter U or W. So sometimes they'll say Kunwem or Khnum and so forth. Kunwem is the potter divinity, meaning you'll see him as a ram-headed divinity he is the force in creation that conjoins. He's the conjoiner. He conjoins the sperm and the ovum, that force that draws them and conjoins them together and fuses them together in the womb and keeps them fused together. It'll be shown on a potter's wheel, fashioning the body of the person and the ka, or kayat, the soul of the person, as twin on the potter's wheel. So fashioning your body so your spirit can take up residence in your body, fashioning your ka, the spiritual substance that takes form as your ka. He fashions those two on the divine potter's wheel. He is in the womb fashioning and conjoining the sperm and ovum and the spirit, the sum, the spirit, and conjoining it into that zygote, into that newly formed, fused, fertilized egg. So he's the conjoiner, and he uses his two hands, as they say, to conjoin, to fashion, to mold. He's the fashioner. So they show him symbolically on a potter's wheel, not only fashioning the world, fashioning the egg and so forth, but conjoining his body and the soul. And it goes directly to the pronunciation of his name. So some will say Khnum, some is Kunemu, and so forth. We understand the proper vocalization of the name because in Akhan culture, the term for a potter is Kunwem. So Kunwem is the potter. Kunwem fo are the group of people who engage in that function of pottery, making, fashioning clay pots and things like that. So the Kunwem fo are the potter people or the potter. Kunwem ni is one potter. So Kunwem is the potter. Of course, this is Kunwem or Kunwemu from ancient Kemet, which is the potter divinity. So, of course, once again, we have that connection. As we always mention, ancient Akhan people originated, along with others, in the region of ancient Khanat, which is a title of ancient Nubia. We migrated eventually west, reestablished the ancient empire of Khanat or Ghana over a couple thousand years ago. And then about 1,000 years ago, we left that region because of Muslim invasions, moved towards the forest belt in the western part of the continent and reestablished Akhana or Akhan civilization. And then a few hundred years ago, some of us were taken from that region and forced via the Musuo Kwesi, the great perversity, the enslavement era, into the Western Hemisphere, North America, South America, Central America, the Caribbean, and Europe. And there are many Akhan people in this hemisphere as well. So we always show that connection between our ancient ancestry in Khanat or Khanit, the Khanit land, Nubia, western part of the continent, to the Western Hemisphere. And linguistically, we just showed, of course, not only did we migrate physically, but we carried the culture, and this is why Kunwem, the great potter divinity in ancient Kemet and Khanat, you find Kunwem or Kunwem, the potter, in the Akhan tradition as well. Now, so that's the major divinity that we're talking about here. In Kemet, it's critical to understand that typically it rarely ever rains. So the people are totally dependent on the flooding of Hapi, the river, so-called Nile, every year. The river will flood the banks. Kemet is on a floodplain. It will flood the banks, overrun the banks, soak the soil on both sides of the river. The country in that region along the riverbanks would be flooded for a number of months. Then when the water began to recede, we would notice that the black silt had been carried from the south to the north. The rich black silt had been deposited on the banks of the river. And when that water receded, that flood water receded, now there's rich black silt, black soil left, the Kam, or the great black soil, and the people were able to go out, plant their crops, and so forth. Totally dependent on that yearly flooding of the river. If the river did not flood one year, then people would not have crops for that whole year. And, of course, there would be storage houses for grain and things like that, but if it didn't flood one year, then there are no crops because it's not raining. It's not like in other places where every few weeks it rains and, you can plant crops every few weeks or whenever you need to, and it's going to rain at some point, and, things are going to be fertile. It will flood on a regular basis. This particular text talks about a dire situation where there was a 7-year famine, basically because the river had not flooded to its normal height in 7 years. And because of that, of course, all the stores of grain that had been saved up were used up. The people were starving, suffering, and it was a great deal of calamity. The king at the particular time, the Ensu, the Ptah, King Jasuru, often called Zoser, once he saw this calamity, and it continued to develop, and it was very severe and lasted for a number of years, he had to recognize, okay, we need to do something about this. He wanted to figure out why Hapi, the river, had not come forward like it normally does. What did we do? Are we out of harmony with order? Who governs the flooding of the river? What divinities govern that? What are their names? Where are they at? And what do we need to do to get back in harmony with them so we can have abundance once again in the land? And as we read through this text, not only did this happen in ancient Kemet, of course, this is where they stole the story of the 7 years famine in the so-called Bible, fictional story. So basically they learned about this story, which is very popular in ancient Kemet, because this is what actually happened at a time in ancient Kemet. Once they learned about this, then they took this whole story, rewrote it, stuck it in the Bible, and then said that their fake God that they had just manufactured created the 7-year famine. So that's very similar to, say there was an earthquake. There was an earthquake a few years ago in Washington, D.C., which is very rare. Happened about 4 years ago, 13,010, or something like that, or maybe 13,011, say 13,011, so-called 2011. And that's, it's all in the newspapers and everything else. Somebody comes along in 13,014 or 2014, reads the news clippings and said, 3 years ago there was actually an earthquake in D.C. That's very unusual. That rarely happens. So they sit down and start writing the story based on all the news clippings that they found on the internet about the earthquake in D.C. that happened 3 years ago. And they write a narrative as though the earthquake has not happened yet, and they're writing the narrative as though it's being written 3 years before the earthquake happened. And in the narrative it says, my God says that because of what you have done, we're going to cause an earthquake to hit you in 2011, and it's going to be the first time there was an earthquake like this in D.C., and you'll know the power of our Lord. And then they write this little story, and then they pass the story out. Now, of course, they write the story 3 years after the earthquake has happened in D.C., but the way they write the story is as if they were writing it 3 years before the earthquake happened, as though it was a prophecy, which of course it was not. And then they stick their little fake God as the author of the earthquake to punish people in the city because they didn't obey the little fake God. And years later, if somebody found that little piece of paper, that little fake prophecy, they would say, wow, they prophesied an earthquake 3 years in advance, and maybe it was their little fake God that really did it. Maybe that God is real. So that's exactly what happened with this story, the 7-year famine from ancient Kemet. The whites and offspring took this story and manufactured that story in the Bible about, the 7-year famine and the 7 years of, goodness and the 7 years of starvation and all that other nonsense. All right. So, but as we read through the story, you'll find that not only were there, people were suffering and everything, and it goes into great detail about, things that were going on and the state of the country, the state of the people and everything else. the king wanted to find out, hey, what do we need to do? We're out of harmony clearly with the Obosom, with the divinities. So who are the divinities we are out of harmony with that regulate the flow of the river? Obviously, we're out of harmony with them. We need to find out who they are. And the king asked the chief priest of Tahuti and Imhotep to go to the Ptah, the house of life, find all the writings from the ancestresses and ancestors about the topography of ancient Kemet, all the way to the south into ancient Khanit, into Nubia, the names of the deities that regulate the flow of the river, everything about what's going on and what should be happening. Consult the books of the ancestresses and ancestors. And the priest goes and does that. Or, I'm sorry, the official that he calls upon goes and does that. And then the official comes back and says, hey, this is the information. Kunwem is the great divinity. There are other divinities in the shrine house in the south. He describes the region of the south. Kunwem is the master of what he does, what his functions are, the divinity's functions are, the topography of the land, the geographical features of the land, and everything else. And the king is, gratified for that, so he gets up and he goes down to the south. He goes to the shrine house of Kunwem. He invokes the divinity. He communicates with the divinity. Divinity shows him who he is, communicates directly with him, shows him why all these problems took place. The king gives offerings, makes sacrifice, gives offerings to the divinity, and then Kunwem promises that he's going to make everything abundant once again. So that's what happens in the story, but it directly impacts exactly what's going on with our people today. And as we read through the story, we're going to read through the whole story. Many people have never read through the Famine Stela before, and as we read through it, we'll make commentary and show exactly how it's related to us, and we'll get into the questions about sacrifice and things like that. If anybody has any questions, we'll get into all of that. So, all right, so that link that we have in the PDF link, it says hermetics.org. This is just one of many sites that decided to take the actual book and copy just the translation, put it in the PDF, and put it out there on the net for free. So you'll find many sites that do that. All right, and it's on the particular. Just want to make sure we find the right section so everybody gets down there, page 71 in this particular PDF. Okay, and it starts off the title, The Legend of the God Kunwem and of a 7 Years Famine. So, it says, in the 18th year of the Heru Ntorokat, of the king of the south and north, the lord of the shrines, Wachet Nekabet, the golden Heru, Jaseru, often called Zosar, when Matar was high prince and Erpa and governor of the temple cities in the land of the south and director of the Khanitu, the Khanit people, the Khan people in Aptu. There was brought unto him the following royal dispatch. So Matar was a prince, Erpa, hereditary ruler, governor of the temple cities in the land of the south, the southern region of Kemet at the time. And he receives a royal dispatch from the Ensu, the Ptah, the king, quote-unquote pharaoh, King Jaseru, and he sent the following royal dispatch. This is to inform you that misery has laid hold upon me as I sit upon the great throne by reason of those who dwell in the great house. My heart is grievously afflicted by reason of the exceedingly great evil which has happened because Hapi, the divinity in the Nile River, has not come forth in my time to the proper height for 7 years. Grain is very scarce, vegetables are lacking altogether, every kind of thing which men eat for their food has ceased, and every man now plunders his neighbor. Men wish to walk, but are unable to move. The child cries, the young man drags his limbs along, and the hearts of the aged people are crushed with despair. Their legs give way under them, and they sink down to the ground, and their hands are laid upon their bodies in pain. The Shenu, or the nobles, are destitute of counsel, meaning they don't have any answers. And the storehouses, which should contain supplies, are open. There comes forth from them nothing but wind, because the storehouses became empty. Everything is in a state of ruin. My mind has remembered going back to a former time when I had an advocate, to the time of the Obosom, the divinities, and of the Hapui, which is the ibis animal totem of Tahuti, and of the chief Keriheb priest Imhotep, the son of Ptah of his southern wall. So now, the king, Jaseru, he sent word to the south, to the prince, the Edipah, the hereditary ruler Matar, and he's telling him everything that's negative happening in Kemet. Hapi has not risen because the river has not risen for over 7 years, and people are suffering. Obviously, these sufferings that we see, the children crying, people's hearts are giving out, legs are giving out, people starving. These are the kind of things that reflect very closely the kind of things that are happening with our people, of course, at today, where we are right now. So then he asked Matar, the hereditary ruler down there in the land, Temple Cities, land of the south, he asked him, where is the place of birth of Hapi, meaning the Nile? What deity, god or goddess, presides over it? What manner of form has this divinity? It is he who establishes revenue for me and a full store of grain, talking about Hapi. I would go to the chief of the house of Sekhet, whose beneficence strengthens all men in their works. I would enter into the house of life, meaning the Per'ank. I would unfold the written rolls that are found therein, meaning the books, and I would lay my hand upon them. So then it says, then Matar set out on his journey, and he returned to me straightway. And the king is talking when he's saying, return to me. So the hereditary prince, who's the lord of the land of the south, the temple cities of the south, Matar, he went out on his journey, and the king says, and he returned, Matar returned to me straightway, and he gave me instruction concerning the increase of Hapi, the Nile, and he told me all things which men had written concerning it, and he revealed to me the secret doors whereto my ancestresses and ancestors had betaken themselves quickly, the like of which has never been to any king since the time of Ra. And he said to me, so Matar comes back, he tells the king that he went and found the books in the Per'ank, the house of life in the south, and now everything that was written by the ancestresses and ancestors of the king and, of course, the people, Matar is now going to give him the information that he discovered in the Per'ank, in the house of life. And this is what he said. So the king says, and he said unto me, there is a city in the middle of the stream wherefrom Hapi makes his appearance. Abu was its name in the beginning. And, of course, this is Elephantine in the Greek rendition. But it's Abu in ancient Kemet. Abu was its name in the beginning. It is the city of the beginning. And is the nome of the city of the beginning. It reaches to Wawa, which is a region of Nubia, or Khanit, which is the beginning of the land. So Khanit, or Khan, is the beginning of the land. Nubia is the beginning of the land. And this is the city. There is, too, a flight of steps which rears itself to a great height, and is the support of Ra. And when you see the Medut for that, it looks like a step pyramid, a highland, which is a Ka, which is the support of Ra. When he makes his calculation to prolong life to everyone. Nechem Chem Ankh, or the sweet life, is the name of the abode. The two Kerti caverns is the name of the water, and they are the two breaths from which every good thing comes forth. So, and we're going to scroll down. Here is the bed of Hapi, the Nile, wherein he renews his youth in his season, wherein he causes the flooding of the land. He comes and has union as he journeys, as a man has union with a woman. And he plays the part of a husband and satisfies his desire. So it's talking about it is from this southern region of Qanat, so-called Nubia, where the river originally flows out of once it hits southern Kemet and goes up into northern Kemet. This is the region where Hapi manifests. The river begins to swell in that particular region in relationship to ancient Kemet. And when it says he journeys and has union like a man with a woman, copulating like a man with a woman, once the water begins to move through the earth mother, it's like a conception, the seminal fluid connecting with the ovum. It's like having union, a male and female, to give birth to fertility and so forth. And that's why they use it that way. He rises to the height of 28 cubits at Abu, and he drops at Sama Behudet to 7 cubits, that's in the north. The union there is of the god Kunwem in Abu. He smites the ground with his sandals, and his fullness becomes abundant. He opens the bolt of the door with his hand, and he throws open the double door of the opening through which the water comes. So they're saying that Kunwem is the divinity who pulls the bolt open and the door swing open, and the flood of the river comes forward. And that deals with not only the earthly Nile, but the river of stars, which is the heavenly Nile, and the river of energy that floods the earth. Okay. Moreover, he dwells there in the form of the god Shu. He has the title Kunwem Shu, like one who is lord over his own territory and his homestead, the name of which is or Off, which is the island. And of course, we talk about that Afuraka, Off, meaning the island, or the landmass surrounded by water, the island or continent. There he keeps an account of the products of the land of the south and the land of the north. In order to give unto every deity his proper share, he leads to each the metals and the precious stones and the four-footed beasts and the feathered fowl and the fish and everything whereon they live, and the cord for the measuring of the land and the tablet whereon the register is kept are there. So all of these things are kept by the divinity Kunwem. He measures the flow of the river so that every region of the country receives that water, so there's fertility in every region of the country, distributes the sacred stones and mineral life to every region of the country governed by different divinities. Everything is regulated by Shu, and he keeps Kunwem, and he keeps an account of these regulations in the south in his shrine house. Okay, and there's an edifice of wood there, with the portals thereof formed of reeds, wherein he dwells as one who is over his own territory, and he makes the foliage of the trees to serve as a roof. This is talking about the shrine house of the deity Kunwem that he's describing. His god house or shrine house has an opening towards the southeast, and Ra, when operating through the sun, stands immediately opposite thereto every day. So the opening is towards the sunrise every day. The stream which flows along the south side thereof has danger for him that attacketh it, and it has a defense, a wall which enters into the region of the men of Knesset, which is Nubia on the south. Huge mountains filled with masses of stone are round about its domain on the east side and shut it in. From there come the quarrymen with things or tools of every kind. When they seek to build a house for any divinity in the land of the south or in the land of the north, or shrines as abodes for sacred animals, or royal pyramids and statues of all kinds. So when it says the huge mountains of the south in Khanit or Nubia, masses of stone round about it, when the quarrymen come with their tools, it is to the south that they would go, where all the precious minerals are, where the granite is, to get all the materials they need whenever they're going to build pyramids, they're going to build statues, they're going to build abodes for animals, they're going to build shrines for any of the divinities. They would go to the south where all of this mineral wealth is, in order to extract that and build what they need to build in the south and in the north. And they stand up in front of the house of the divinity and in the sanctuary chamber, and their sweet-smelling offerings are presented before the face of the deity Kunwem during his circuit, even as when they bring the garden herbs and flowers of every kind. The 4 parts thereof are in Abu, the city of Abu. The front is in the city of Abu, and the hind parts of the back are in the city of Sanu. One portion thereof is on the east side of the river, and another portion is on the west side of the river, and another portion is in the middle of the river. The stream decks the region with its waters during a certain season of the year, and it is a place of delight for every man. And works are carried on among these quarries which are on the edges of the river, for the stream immediately faces this city of Abu itself, and there exists the granite, the substance whereof is hard, the stone of Abu is what it is called. So he's describing the geography of the region of Abu, the sacred city of Kunwem, all the precious stones, mineral life, the great hard granite known as the stone of Abu that's used for building shrines, temples, pyramids, and so forth. All the different things that you find in that area, this is coming from the books that were found in the Para-Ankh, the House of Life, written by the ancestresses and ancestors, as they made a meticulous account of every aspect of the country and the shrines and everything that was there. Okay. Then he talks about the divinities that are found in that shrine house. Here is a list of the names of the deities who dwell in the divine house of Kunwem. The Obosom, the goddess of the star Sapatit, which is called Sirius by the whites and their offspring. The goddess Anuket, Hapi, Shu, Yeb, Nut, Osar, Heru, Oset, and Nebuchadnezzar. Now this is a list of the divinities, but we also notice that in the text there's a portion that was mutilated on the actual stela, on the stone. There's a missing portion, so there may be another divinity that was mutilated at that portion. So just to make note of that. So when you actually see the actual stela, which you can download pictures of that, you'll find that. Here are the names of the stones which lie in the heart of the mountains, some on the east side, some on the west side, some in the midst of the stream of Abu. They exist in the heart of Abu, they exist in the country on the east bank, and in the country on the west bank, and in the midst of the stream, namely the Bekin stone, Medi stone, Atbekab stone, Raket stone, and White Uchi stone. These are found on the east bank. The Perchani stone is found on the west bank, and the Teshi stone in the river. This is the kind of mineral life found, the topography of the country he's dealing with. Here are the names of the hard or hidden precious stones which are found in the upper side, among them being, there was a mutilation here of a particular stone, the name of which is spread abroad through a space of 4 ataru measures: gold, silver, copper, iron, lapis lazuli, emerald, tahin, which is like a form of crystal, Khnem, ruby, kai, menu, betka, timi, na, all these different kinds of precious stones found in these regions. The following come forth from the forepart or the front of the land: the Mehi stone, Hemaki stone, Abheti stone, iron ore, alabaster for statues, mother of emerald, antimony, seeds or gum of the Sehi plant, seeds or gum of the Amim plant, seeds or gum of the incense plant. These are found in the front parts of its double city. These are the things I learned there from Matar. So this is the king is saying, this is what the prince, the hereditary chief down there in the south, when I sent that royal message to him, when he went to the Per-Ankh, the House of Life, got the books of the ancestresses and ancestors, and he came back and read all these things to me about the city of Kunwem, his shrine house, the precious stones, metals, and everything that's in the earth, and the richness of that region. These are the things he says he learned from Matar, from the hereditary chief. Okay. So, then the king says, now, my heart was very happy when I heard these things, and I entered into the temple of Kunwem. So he traveled and went to the south, went to the temple of Kunwem. The overseers in the temple unrolled the documents which were fastened up. The water of purification was sprinkled upon me. Our progress was made through the secret places, the hidden places or chambers, and a great offering consisting of bread cakes, beer, geese, oxen, and beautiful things of all kinds were offered to the deities, the gods and goddesses, the Obosom, who dwell in Abu, whose names are proclaimed at the place which is called the couch of the heart in life and power. And I found the Obosom, the god, standing in front of me, and I made him to be at peace with me by means of the thank offering which I offered unto him. And I made prayer and supplication before him. Then he opened his eyes, and his heart was inclined to hear me, and his words were strong when he said, I am Kunwem. So now the deity is speaking to the king after he gave offerings to the divinity in his shrine house. Just as we go to a shrine house today, we put out food, we give offerings, we invoke the Obosom, invoke the Orisha, invoke the Voodoo. They come and possess someone, or they manifest in front of us where we can see them and begin to speak. And so Kunwem began to speak. He said, I am Kunwem who fashioned you. My two hands were about you and knitted together your body and made healthy your body's members. And it is I who gave you your heart. Yet the minerals and precious stones lie under each other, and they have done so from an older time. And no man hath worked them in order to build the houses of the deity, or to restore those which have fallen into ruin, or to hew out shrines for the deities of the south and of the north, or to do what he ought to do for his master, notwithstanding that I am the master and the creator in this region. So, he also goes on to say, Kunwem says, I am he who created himself, like Nu, the great divinity, who came into being at the beginning, like Hapi, who rises according to his will, in order to give help to him that labors for me. I am the director and guide of all men, of course, only Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, men and women, at their seasons, the most great, the father of the divinities, like Shu, the great one, the chief of the earth. The two halves of the sky, meaning the east and the west, are as a habitation below me. A lake of water has been poured out for me, talking about Hapi, the river, which embraces the field, land, and his embrace provides the means of life for every node, meaning every person, according to the extent of his embrace of the field land. With old age comes the condition of weakness. I will make Hapi, meaning the river, rise for you, and in no year will he fail, and he will spread himself out and rest upon every land. Green plants and herbs and trees will bow beneath the weight of their produce, meaning they will be so fertile and have so much fruit that they will begin to bend over. And the female Obosom, Rinnutet, who is the divinity of the harvest, will be at the head of everything. The harvest will be at the head of everything, and every product will increase by hundreds of thousands according to the cubit of the year. The people will be filled, verily their heart's desire, and everyone's misery shall pass away, and the emptiness of their storehouses of grain will come to an end. The land of Ptah Meri shall come to be a region of cultivated land. The district thereof will be yellow with grain crops, and the grain thereof will be good. And fertility will come according to the desire of the people more than there has ever been before. So after the king gave offerings to Kunwem, prayed to Kunwem, invoked him, Kunwem comes forth. He talks about who he actually is, what his function in creation is. And he also says, people have their stones and precious stones and everything in the earth here, but people for a while now have not gone into the earth and built the shrines of the divinities. They have not repaired those who have fallen into ruin. People have neglected their duty to harmonize via shrine work with the Obosom. And because people have gotten out of harmony with living in harmony with the Obosom and invoking the forces in nature that govern order, now disorder has fallen upon the land. But now since you have come and you are the ruler of the land, and you have come to restore balance and realign yourself with me, Kunwem, the divinity, then I'm going to make sure that the land becomes fertile again. I'm going to unbolt the door, release the waters of Hapi, and things will get back to normal, and you will benefit greatly. So then the king says, then I awakened at the mention of crops. My heart or my courage came back equal to my former, like before my former despair, and I made the following decree in the temple of my father Kunwem. So now the king makes a decree. After the divinity says he's going to do what he's promised to do, then the king makes a decree, and this is a decree that's going to be the law of the entire land, south and north. The king gives an offering to Kunwem, the lord of the city of Kebhet, the governor of Ta-Seti, another title of Nubia Hanat, in return for those things which he has done for me. There will be given, and he's talking to Kunwem now, things that you have done for me. He's talking to Kunwem. He's saying, I'm making this decree, I'm going to give you an offering, you, the lord of the city of Kebhet, the governor of Ta-Seti, in return for those things which you have done for me. There will be given unto you on your right hand riverbank of Manu, on your left hand the riverbank of Abu, together with the land about the city for a space of 20 measures on the east side and on the west side, with gardens and the riverfront everywhere throughout the region included in these measures. From every husbandman who tills the ground and makes to live again the slain, places water upon the riverbanks and all the islands which are in front of the region and so forth. So he's talking about a large region that he's going to designate for the shrine, the sanctuary of Kunwem, to reestablish that. And he goes into some detail about that. Whatever is caught in the nets by every fisherman and by every fowler, whatever is taken by the catches of fish and by the snares of birds and by every hunter of wild animals and by every man who snares lions in the mountains, when these things enter the city, 1/10 of them shall be demanded. So first he reestablishes this region that's going to be a sacred center for the temple of Kunwem. He's going to repair the temple, and he's exacting a tax, 1/10 of all produce, whether it's plant life, animal life, mineral life. When people till the ground, when they have produce, when they hunt, whether it's birds or oxen or fowl, whatever it is, 1/10 of everything that is produced is going to be given as an offering to support the shrine house, to support the temple, to support the religious practices, because that is the foundation of order. When you connect with the ancestral religion, realign yourself with the forces of nature, then order is manifest in the world. So the centerpiece of the ancestral religion is the shrine, and then you have the temple or the shrine house within which the shrine is situated, and he established a vast region for that sanctuary of Kunwem, and therefore, in order to support that, and including the priests and priestesses and people working with the shrine and maintaining the house of life, the training facility, the quote-unquote college or university within the temple and so forth, 1/10 of all produce, all that is produced by everybody in the land, immediately you take 1/10 off and then you give it to the shrine house. Because once the shrine house is supported, people can go to the shrine house and get in harmony with the divinity, realign their thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order through ritual practice. When we engage that process as a collective, then we notice that order will manifest within the community. So this is how we support the shrine house. Of course, this is where you get the whole notion that the whites and their offspring stole and put in the so-called Bible, tithing, or 1/10 of your income goes to the church. They got this directly from this text, stolen, lifted directly, just like the 7-year famine story is lifted directly from this text. And they go into more detail about the 1/10 percentage. So we have some more details here. And he also talks about all the calves which are cast through the regions which are included in these measures. 1/10 of their number shall be set apart as animals which are sealed for all the burnt offerings which are offered up daily. So there are certain animals that were offered animals are killed before the people eat the meat. They cook the meat, but part of that cooking process and offering, just like you give food, you eat some food, you take a portion of the food that you eat, put it on a plate, and give it to the ancestresses and ancestors. Doing that today, like we do on our shrines today, they did the same thing in ancient Kemet: kill an animal, cook the meat. Part of that becomes an offering for the shrine house, but then the rest of it, the people consume, the people who were eating meat at that particular time. And of course, we have an article talking about the dietary practices in ancient Kemet. So this is what they're talking about when they're talking about the burnt offerings, which are offered up daily. And in order to have offerings that are offered up daily to the Obosom in the shrine house, of course, this is, of course, where you get one of the reasons for the 1/10, or the quote-unquote tithing, taking 1/10 of the income or the production of the people to donate to the shrine house. Okay, and moreover, the gift of 1/10 shall be levied upon the gold, ivory, ebony, spices, carnelian, salwood, seshet spice, doom palm fruit, nephwood, and upon woods and products of every kind whatsoever, which the Khanitu and the Khanitu of Hinresu and the people of Kemet and every person whatsoever shall bring in. So even amongst the sacred metals, the ivory, the wood, the ebony, the spices, the incenses, everything, 1/10 of that also will be taken. Of course, when people are building shrines, they not only use wood for the statues, gold is used for certain statues, for these solar divinities, silver is used for lunar-type divinities. Gold is very often placed inside as a component of shrines because of the magnetism of that metal. Iron is used sometimes, the iron ore and things like that, so various different things. But there's a levy of 1/10 is also, they're saying, going to be placed on all of the precious metals, woods, palm fruit, and everything else that came into the region. And every hand shall pass them by, and no officer of the revenue whatsoever shall utter a word beyond these places to demand or levy on these things from them, or to take things over and above those which are intended for the capital city. So he's also laying a decree and a warning that people are not to take more than what they should be taking, and they shouldn't be levying taxes or the 10th, the quote-unquote tithing, for people who it doesn't apply to. He also says, I will give to you land belonging to the city, which bears stones and good land for cultivation. Nothing thereof will be diminished or withheld. All of these things in order to deceive the scribes and the revenue officers and the inspectors of the king, on whom it shall be incumbent to certify everything. So he's talking about accountants in place, tax collectors, inspectors, and so forth, so nobody's being deceived. A great deal of cultivatable land, which will also be a part of the temple. So typically, people who are priests and priestesses, they have their own land to be able to cultivate, grow their own food, and so forth, support themselves. So they're not dependent on payments from people to do rituals and so forth. They can support themselves because they have their own land, cultivatable land, and they grow food and everything else, and herbs and everything else. But then when people do work, when they do work, and when they do good work, people will support them and bring things, whether it's precious metals or food offerings and things like that. And those metals also go into not just the temples themselves, but the creation of shrines, the creation of different things to participate in the ancestral religious practices. Okay, so, and that's going into everything, and it talks about certifying everything, the accountants, everything will be measured, everything will be certified, there will be accountability on everything. And further, I will cause the masons and the hewer of ore, and the workers in metal, and the smelters of gold, and the sculptors in stone, and the ore crushers, and the furnacemen, and the handicraftsmen of every kind whatsoever who work in hewing, and cutting, and polishing these stones, and in gold, and silver, and copper, and lead, and every worker in wood, who shall cut down any tree, or carry on any trade of any kind, or work which is connected with the wood trade, to pay tithe upon all the natural products and also upon the hard stones which are brought from their beds above, and quarried stones of all kinds. So the workers who are doing that kind of work, dealing with those precious metals, some of that will go towards the establishment of new shrines for the divinities, as well as the repair of old shrines for the divinities. So instead of the priests going out to do the quarrying, if there were people already doing that kind of work anyway, a tenth of that will be given to the shrines so the shrines can be repaired, so that people can have a place to go, give offerings, get in harmony with the Obosom, so that harmony can also extend to the families and everybody else. It also says that there should be an inspector over the weighing of the gold and silver and copper and real precious stones and other things which the metal workers require for the house of gold, and the sculptors of the images of the deities need in the making and repairing of them, and these things shall be exempted from tithing, and the workmen also. So those who are working on the sculptures for the images of the deities, and they themselves, that will be exempted from the tithing. They're doing the work of the divinities. They spend all day carving the sculptures or cutting images out of granite and so forth, specifically for the divinities, so their work would not be taxed, and the materials that they use to create the images for the divinities, that the deities take up residence in through ritual practice, that will not be taxed either. Okay, and then finally, and it also says, and everything shall be delivered or given in front of the storehouse to their children the second time for the protection of everything, and whatsoever is before the deity's house shall be in abundance, just as it has ever been from the earliest time. And a copy of this decree shall be inscribed upon a stele, which shall be set up in the holy place according to the writing of the original document, which is cut upon wood, and figures of this, hold on one second. Let me scroll back down, and figures of this deity and the overseers of the temple shall be cut thereon. Whosoever shall spit upon that which is on it shall be admonished by the rope, meaning being hung. And the overseers of the priests and every overseer of the people of the house of the divinity shall ensure the perpetuation of my name in the house of the deity, Kunwem, the Lord of Abu, forever. So, that's the text. There are a number of different things important in the text that we're going to get into. Let me just make sure there's no questions. All right. So what we're dealing with, as you can see, because of the people's neglect of the shrine, neglect of the connecting with the particular divinity that rules over this order in creation. We neglect the divinities, then we fall out of order. The Obosom are the spirits that animate sun, moon, stars, oceans, rivers, and so forth. They also operate through their children, which are Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. Your Kra, your soul, your divine consciousness that dwells in the head region is a divinity in and of itself, a colleague of the other divinity. When you neglect the divinities, including your own Kra, disalign yourself from your own Kra, that force in your head region that's always pulling you towards divine order. You reject the divinities, then you're rejecting order. You're rejecting the capacity to align your thoughts, intentions, and actions with order. That's what you're doing. So when you engage that process and you begin to neglect the forces in nature, then not only do you suffer physically, because all physical illness, all disease is fundamentally a neglect of aligning with your Kra. Because if you align with your Kra, you'll be attracted to certain foods to consume, and other foods will be repulsive to you, whether they're just things that normally shouldn't be eaten, or if they're a dietary taboo for you, but they're not necessarily a dietary etiwadi or taboo for somebody else in your family or your group. But for you, it may be a taboo. Your Kra will direct you and make those things repulsive to you. But if you reject your Kra, say, well, I feel like I shouldn't eat this, but I'm going to eat it anyway, then you consume it and then you have problems. All kinds of disease, minor or major, whatever. Any form of disease is fundamentally a disalignment from the Kra. The same thing occurs, so that's just neglecting the Kra on a physiological level. You neglect the Kra on a mental and emotional level. Your Kra is leading you towards certain thoughts and intentions which will lead to certain kinds of harmonious behavior, and you reject that because you're conditioned to be drawn to or attracted to engaging in other kinds of behavior which may be lustful, misguided desire, or even malicious behavior, even though you know it's wrong, but you engage in it anyway. So again, you're rejecting your Kra, rejecting that divinity, that force in nature, that divinely ordered force within your head. You're neglecting that. Now you're going to suffer emotionally and mentally. All emotional instability, anxiety, depression, unjustifiable anger, lust, and everything else. All those various things fundamentally represents a disalignment in some form or fashion from the Kra. When you realign with the Kra, then you restore balance to yourself emotionally and mentally. Just like physically, when you align with your Kra, you put the right things in your body, you repel the wrong things, the negative things. Emotionally and mentally, when people manifest, they can be a grown person, they have a career, doing well financially, but they're emotionally unstable. They have inadequacies and conditionings, and they manifest in various ways, and they go off on people and different things like that, manifesting emotional immaturity or emotional instability, or even further, more extreme forms of depression, or even schizophrenia, or various kinds of things. Fundamentally, there's a disalignment from the Kra, or even in the worst case scenario, a total detachment where the Kra separates itself from the person and from their body totally. And we've talked about that, and that you can look for that information in the Okra complex, the soul of Akhan, where we talk about the nature of the Kra, how it can detach, and how to ritually draw the Okra back to be seated in the head of the person. But so again, on a physical level, you become disaligned from the Kra, you manifest physical disease. On a mental and emotional level, you disalign from the Kra, you manifest emotional dis-ease or emotional instability. Mental dis-ease, mental instability. You can't properly sanction or harmoniously sanction your thoughts and intentions, and therefore your behavior, so you find yourself making bad decisions, getting into unnecessary conflicts when you shouldn't be getting into conflicts, causing anxiety, negative interfaces with people you're connected with as well as people you're not connected with, all kinds of things because of disalignment from the divinity. That's emotional and mental. Then spiritually, you disalign from the Kra, then you're more susceptible to be drawn and negatively influenced by discarnate spirits and other people's projections that are disorderly. So that manifests as a spiritual disorder, spiritual disalignment. Having a void, not knowing what you need to do, suffering, different kinds of events keep happening, different kinds of people keep coming into your sphere awareness and activity that are self-destructive, and you're suffering all kinds of setbacks and negative things and problems financially and everything else because of disalignment spiritually from your own Kra. These are all individuals. But when you have a number of people engaged in that kind of disalignment, now you have a social order that begins to suffer and begins to crumble and begins to fracture because people are out of alignment, not only with the divinity that governs their own Kra, but also the divinity that governs their clan, whether it's their matri clan or patri clan, and then the major divinities of the region of which they live in. So if they're living along the river Nile, and Hapi is a major divinity, and they don't live in harmony with Hapi, there's going to be a problem socially because they're out of harmony with order. And anytime you're out of harmony with order and disaligned from order, then there's going to be disorder that manifests physically, spiritually, emotionally, and so forth. So this is what we're talking about on an individual level. a social level, when the people get out of harmony, first it starts off with just denying your own crop. And then you continue to do that, and then it's much easier, quote unquote, to fall into rejecting the Obosom that govern the region of which you're a part and your family structure and so forth. So when these people neglecting Kunwem, the one who actually governs the river, the fertility of the land and so forth, and the people are neglectful, getting out of harmony with order, then they're out of harmony with the force in creation, then they start manifesting and creating all this kind of disease, social disease, suffering and so forth. The river stops flowing because the people are neglecting the force in creation. They're repelling that force, making themselves repulsive to that force, and now it causes a physical problem physiologically in the region, the lack of the flowing of the river. It's the same thing with us. The flow of energy moving through your spirit body will be blocked up, stopped. It won't flood your organs or flood your spirit body with energy. It'll be stopped. There will be no flood when you neglect your kra, and then you'll be suffering spiritually. You'll be drowning spiritually. You'll be in famine spiritually. 7 years famine. You notice in our book, Ankh, the origin of the term yoga, and Kara Kasa, the origin and nature of the chakra. We prove that, of course, Ankh or Yonk is where they get Yonk or Yunk or Yog, Yug in Proto-Indo-European and later Yok in English. And Kara is where they get Kara or Chakra. In India, it comes from Kara in ancient Kemet. We proved that there are 7 divinities that govern the 7 regions up and down the spine. We go into detail about that. So when we're talking about Hapi, the river, the flowing of the river, bringing the energy, bringing the fertility to the land on a regular basis, it's not only the flow of river of blood in your body that carries nutrients and floods the organs and systems with blood and oxygen and energy and nutrients and so forth, but the river of energy in your body, which in the sky is called the Hap or Hapi or Hapi the Great. The Milky Way, when you see the river of stars in the sky, that is the Hap or the Hapi or the Great Hapi. That's the river of stars in the sky in your body. That's the river of energy within your body. And that river itself, just like you can cause a problem with the river of blood in your body through high blood pressure because you're eating the wrong foods and you're causing blockages and so forth, you can cause blockages in your energy system by getting out of harmony with the Obosom that governs you, that governs your crop. So then the flow of energy or the release of energy, Kunwem not unbolting the door and releasing the energy, the flow of Hapi or the flow of the river, and that 7 years famine or starvation, or the 7 sinners, the 7 Karu are starving of energy, starving of nutrients, starving of nourishment, and so forth. So all these things are related. So when we get out of harmony with the divinities, then we starve, we suffer, and so forth, physically as well as socially, physically, spiritually, as well as socially as a collective. When we come back, go back to the words of the ancestresses and ancestors and look at the process. First, they go back to the ancient writings of the ancestresses and ancestors. They go back to the south, to the beginning, to the land of Kanat, the first land. Khan meaning first, foremost, from the beginning. Khan also means to count, to calculate, to reckon. Kanat, the Kanat land or the Kanit land, the first land, the land of the beginning. They go back to the beginning. Sankofa goes to the Per Ankh, the house of life. Goes to the words of the ancestresses and ancestors that have been written for thousands of years to relearn what did they have to say that they meticulously wrote down according to the dictates of the divinity. The house of life being governed by Tahuti and, of course, the priest Imhotep later on. This is what we do today. Our ancestral wisdom has been scribed into the stones into the papyri of ancient Kemet, ancient Khanat, into the Abramu, the gold weights in the Akhan tradition, the Adinkra symbols in the Akhan tradition, and various cultures on the continent. We go back to the words and the cultural motifs of our ancestresses and ancestors and read those, whether it's in the kente cloth or whether it's in the mud cloth or it's in the Odu or Adinkra and so forth, in the proverbial wisdom that's transmitted orally. We go back to the words, the teachings of our ancestresses and ancestors, and they lay it out for us. And then we get an indication of what we have been missing in detail. And then that becomes a roadmap, not to just stop at the reading, but then go to the shrine itself. We got the invitation through what did the ancestresses and ancestors say about what we should be doing and what we're neglecting. So this is why the king first called upon Matar, the hereditary chief of the lands of the south, go into the house of life, tell me what's going on, who are the deities, go to the ancestresses and ancestors, what did they have to say about the deities that rule this region, who are they, what are their functions, and what do we need to do? So he goes to the ancestresses and ancestors first, gets that information. Once the king gets that information from the words of the ancestresses and ancestors, then he goes to the shrine of the deities and invokes the divinity. You evoke the ancestresses and ancestors first, get that information from the cultural perspective of your specific group, and then you invoke the Obosom that you're governed by. And that's what he did. He invoked the Obosom, and the Obosom comes forward, tells him who he is. This is how we learn of the Obosom. We don't learn about the Obosom in detail just from the teachings of the ancestresses and ancestors. And even when we evoke them and they come forward and possess during ritual, after pouring libation in their spirits, we can see them and they communicate with us. They will teach us many things and give us different guidance. But then when we want to learn directly and fuse with who the Obosom actually are, we have to go to the Obosom themselves. And the Obosom will manifest whether through spirit possession or manifest spiritually in front of us so we can see them, taking on their sacred forms. They communicate directly with us, just like Kunwem, the Obosom, the Orisha, the Vodou Kunwem communicated with Jasiru and told him who he is and what his function in the world is. After he told him who he is and what his function in the world is and how he keeps him in harmony with order once he aligns with him, then he says, because the people have not been aligning with me, meaning they have been neglecting, they haven't been hewing the stones, they haven't established or repaired the shrines of the divinities, they let them fall into ruin and so forth. Therefore, the people are out of order, they're out of harmony with their thoughts, intentions, and actions in relationship to their own Ka and the various other divinities. So there's a manifestation of social disorder as well in the world and in the group. And what you need to do is get back in harmony so the king makes an offering, prayer to realign himself, and then Kunwem responds by bringing balance back to the community. That directly impacts everything we're doing today and the way that we're reestablishing culture, going through the words of the ancestresses and ancestors, laid out for us the most extensive exposition of our ancestral religious practices and culture you can find in Khanat, Nubia, in Kemet, so-called Egypt. And we can use that information first as a gateway to see how things were done in the past, because it's a very important measure against what's being done now in the name of ancestral religion. We've seen the corruption in the Akhan tradition, corruption in the Yoruba tradition, corruption in the Congo tradition, corruption in the Vodou tradition, corruption in the Igbo tradition, Negroes trying to incorporate Christianity and Islam and Judaism, Hebrewism, pseudo-esotericism, Kabbalism, and embracing the whites in their offspring, and bisexuality, and all kinds of nonsense, monotheism, foolishness. So we look beyond what the people are doing today, because that's contemporary. Where did those infections come from? We can measure what they're doing today against the standard established and inscribed in stone immortally in the writings and carvings and paintings and so forth of ancient Khanat and Kemet. This is why they left this information there. They left it there for us so we can access it today, just like Jasaru, the king, had his hereditary chief go to the south and access the House of Life and the rolls of the books in the House of Life and access that ancestral information thousands of years ago, just like he was able to access the ancient wisdom so he could restore his memory. He said his mind went back and remembered when he had an advocate in Tahuti and in Imhotep, and he wanted to go back to that primordial, pristine time, that pure time, like the Tepi the first time. He wanted to go back culturally, Sankofa, to get that information from the ancestresses and ancestors of thousands of years preceded him to get what was really done. And now I'm reminded of that. Now I'm going to go and invoke the Obosom and fuse myself with that and reestablish and restore order. So that's the process we're using right now, just like he used that process back then. And then we can use that as a measure against the contemporary infected culture today and correct that. Not only through the writings, but the writings and culture that's exposed on the walls and papyri is a gateway or a window into an ancient time. But then we go through that gateway by invoking the Obosom presently and communicating directly with them, evoking the ancestresses and ancestors, the Nananum and Samafo, Ekungun, Kuvita, and communicating directly with them. And then they will restore the proper culture, the proper protocol in the present through spirit possession, through divination, through communication, shrine work, and so forth. And then we reestablish the culture on a pure foundation, a pure basis. That's how we establish that. Okay, so before we go any further, I'm going to check to see if there are any questions. Anybody has any questions or comments? And then we're going to get into talking about sacrifice. You already talked about offerings, which is a form of sacrifice and so forth. And give me 1 second, right quick. Okay, so now we're talking about sacrifice. There are various different forms of sacrifice, giving offerings. So he talked about giving offerings of food and minerals and everything else. Everything that exists generates emanations of energy based on their form, just by virtue of you being alive, the electromagnetic energy moving through your system, moving through your body, the molecules that make up your physical matter, the protons and neutrons and electrons and so forth, the electrons orbiting around the protons and neutrons, generating a magnetic field and so forth. You have a specific form that's distinct from everyone else's. Your collection of, protons, neutrons, and electrons is different from somebody else's. So, of course, you look different. You have from a specific lineage and so forth. The energy emanating from you, that collection of vibrations emanating from you, is unique to you. The same is true of plant life, animal life, mineral life, and, of course, all Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, human life. So we have already cataloged the various sets of vibrations from various aspects of creation. Notice that the king said that there would be scribes and accountants and everybody meticulously taking account of everything that's in the nation. That's not only with regard to offerings and tithing and things like that. Priests and priestesses have done the same thing. What herbs are good for what illnesses, what minerals are good for what illnesses, what, plant life, animal life, and so forth are good to deal with what energy complex do they have? The fiery animals are cataloged, the watery animals are cataloged, the earthy ones, airy ones, and so forth, all the temperaments in between. what kind of energy complex they're connected with, what Obosom they govern. Of course, the iconography shows what divinities have certain animal totems that are associated with them. So everything is cataloged according to the divinity, the major divinities that govern them, and what effect they have upon us. So that's already been cataloged. So if there's a deficit in your liver, for example, and there are certain minerals or plants that resonate at that frequency that can fill in that deficit of energy, then you give an offering, meaning you eat or you consume those minerals or that plant life to restore that deficit, to bring that energy up to par. That's on a physiological level. If there's a deficit emotionally or mentally, the output that you're exuding energetically, there's a deficit in a certain area because you're not in harmony with order in that area. You're trying to bring yourself up to a certain extent. Then you make an offering to fill in that deficit that you have. It's no different than if you're missing some calcium, then you go to a plant source, mineral source, and you consume it so you can restore that level of calcium that you need so that you can function harmoniously. Same thing spiritually in your spirit body. If there's a deficit in a certain aspect of your spiritual anatomy, then you go get the plant life, animal life, mineral life, give an offering. And if there's a specific fiery kind of energy that you have a deficit of because of your thoughts, intentions, and actions and conditioning, but you want to meet certain situations in life with the requisite energy, then you take that spiritual offering, fill in that deficit for that particular time frame, meet that challenge that you need to meet, but at the same time, you're also building yourself back up spiritually so you won't have to any longer give that kind of offering. You already have it. Just like if you have a problem with calcium and then you're weak and you need to go and do different things, you may take some calcium, or if you're iron deficient, you may take some iron supplements on that particular day to get through a certain thing. That's a temporary replacement. That's an offering, that's a temporary replacement, but at some point you're going to have to reestablish your diet and reestablish your behavior so that you can generate the proper amounts of iron on a regular basis so you don't have to take supplements and things like that. It's the same thing spiritually. You need certain requirements to interface in the world in a harmonious fashion, in a balanced fashion, because of our conditioning, negative behavior, conditionings related to negative behavior. We have internalized a lot of self-destructive things, and we have deficits in our spirit body, just like we have deficits in certain organs and organ systems. We take care of the deficits in organs and organ systems through changing our diet, sleep patterns, exercise, and so forth. You do the same thing spiritually. You make up for those deficits by ingesting or taking in things spiritually, infusing yourself with that kind of energy, giving offerings and so forth, provoking the energy of the Obosom to fill in those deficits. But then you also develop yourself spiritually so that you can fortify yourself so you won't have to rely on doing certain things to get through a certain situation. All right, so that's the basics of offerings. We talk about some of that in the UBEN-HYENG in one of our particular pieces, talking about giving offerings. There's a specific piece on that. What we want to get to is a piece on sacrifice. And just so you know, in the UBEN-HYENG, there's one particular piece in the UBEN-HYENG, The Ancestral Summons. The title is God Structures the Great Economy Through World, Make Offerings, and it talks about offerings. Afurakani in our Akhan tradition, or Afurakani in our Akhan tradition. We're going to go down to this part about sacrifices. Now, when you make an offering to a divinity, say if it's some fruit, of course the tree is sacrificed, the fruit, you pull the fruit off of the tree, it carries a certain kind of energy. You put that energy that's resonating from, just like you have a magnet, and you can prove that there's a magnetic field around a magnet by placing two magnets together and see them attract or repel one another. and you can prove that to a lesser degree, there's magnetism energy moving through every inanimate object and animate object as well. So even when you have fruit, there's energy being emanating from that fruit based on its structure, its nature, and so forth. It's an energy field constantly emanating from the fruit, from the mineral, from everything. So when you put a bowl of fruit or some vegetables, whatever you're using, and you put it on the shrine, you're directing a configuration of energy towards the spirits connected to the shrine, whether it's ancestral spirits, ancestresses and ancestors, or the Obosom. And that energy, once it leaves and is projected from the offering, it provokes the energy of the Obosom or the Nsamafo, just like if you walked up to a person and pushed them, or you walked up to a lion and pushed the lion, you provoke the energy of the lion, and the lion, of course, will respond. When you send that energy out, just like the magnet pushes the other magnet, it provokes the energy of the Obosom. There's a release of energy from the offering, it provokes. But the tree has sacrificed a portion of itself to fill in a deficit of energy somewhere else in creation. That's a sacrifice. So every time we give up something, and when we give up something, we give up something in one area so that we can feed in another area. When we consume fruit, we take the nutrients from the fruit. It's left from the fruit. That's a sacrifice there, but then it restores a deficit within our own energy complex and physiologically as well. When we expend energy, we're sacrificing energy to get a certain project done. And once we sacrifice that energy and use it all up, then we go and replenish the energy by eating, refueling ourselves, getting enough sleep, and so forth. So we sacrifice energy, expend it so that we can get something done. So sacrifice is happening all the time. Here's the key about sacrifice that the whites and their offspring don't want us to understand. And the only reason there's any talk negative about sacrifice, specifically blood sacrifice, animal sacrifice, and ancestral religion, there's only one reason why the whites and their offspring have demonized the notion of animal sacrifice, or specifically blood sacrifice. Because when they wage war against us, murder us, imprison us, and everything else, they can't have a process, and this is why they demonize the ancestral religion and make us want to not embrace ancestral religion at all. They can't have a process where they invade a country, take over a country, and so forth, dominate the people on a regular basis, but the people can, number one, go to a shrine and have sculptures on the shrine, and the forces in nature take up residence in the sculptures of the shrine and direct the people to go kill the whites and their offspring who have invaded the country. They can't control that. And because that's so uncontrollable, they have to figure out a way to make us believe that we shouldn't be going to any sculptures, we shouldn't engage in idolatry and all that nonsense, when in reality idolatry is brilliant and is in harmony with divine order. Whites and their offspring want us to see it as evil because it's so detrimental to everything that they're doing. You can have a whole army occupying a city, but if somebody can sit inside their house and set up a statue, and an Obosom takes up residence in the statue and directs you to go kill the enemy, they can't control that. The same thing is true of, so that's the reason they have to outlaw the tradition and create the whole notion of monotheism, and idolatry is wrong, and necromancy is wrong, communicating with Nsamafo is wrong, communicating with the ancestral spirits is wrong. All of that is wrong, and the only thing you should focus on is the fake white deity and the white representatives of the fake white deity, or the invisible deity. And anything else that you hear or see has to be a demon. It's nonsense. The same thing is true of blood sacrifice. If you have within your spirit the proper knowledge that you can kill something so that you can get in harmony with order, you can restore order to your life individually and collectively as a group by killing, then that's detrimental to everything the whites and their offspring are doing. Because then we would say, well, if we can kill and get in harmony with order, then we should kill the whites and their offspring so we can get in harmony with order. You can't dominate a people when they know within their spirit that killing is divine. Murder is not divine, but killing, justified killing, is. It's in harmony with divine order, and they can help you get in harmony with divine order. So that was key for them to write that out of ancestral religion. So they got us believing that all killing is wrong. Thou shalt not kill. That's the only reason they teach that. They teach that for us. Of course, it doesn't apply to them. They teach that for us. So we have the piece in UBEN-HYENG The Ancestral Summons. It's called Killing is Transference, Murder is Stealing. And in the UBEN-HYENG, every particular essay in the UBEN-HYENG came directly from our NHOMA ancestresses and ancestors. We simply took the information and the specific examples that they wanted us to use, put them in English, of course, and put them forward to give that ancestral wisdom. This is coming from the NHOMA ancestresses and ancestors of Akwamuman, Amaruka, Atifi, which is just the Akhan ancestresses and ancestors, but this is the information that they directed us to put out. And of course, it comports with ancestral religion in general because these principles are universal amongst Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. They just had us put it in a specific manner. So it's only one page, this particular piece, so we're going to go through the whole page dealing with this. This is in the UBEN-HYENG The Ancestral Summons. And we have that book, of course, on the website as well as in the PDF. Ebook version is free, and of course we have the softcover version, which we'll talk about. It says, killing is transference, murder is stealing. All murderers are killers, but all killers are not murderers. Just as disease arises out of an energetic imbalance in the spirit, ultimately manifesting as a physical malady, so does murder arise as an emotional imbalance of the spirit, lust, often manifesting in the physical act of killing. The description of karma, and we have a definition of that, and we show the etymological origin of that in Kemet, but the description of karma as being purely a mental phenomenon is accurate. Even if the physical act is not carried out, the individual is still dominated by lust, whose hegemony will strangle his or her efforts to perceive and live in harmony with the divine plan. Transference is a lawful separation, a taking away of something from its present cycle, placing it then in a different cycle. This separation is defined as lawful if it is found to be in harmony with the divine plan. In other words, if it serves a purpose expressive of divine order. Stealing is rooted in lust. So we're showing the difference between transference, which is a lawful separation of something. Stealing is rooted in lust, which manifests truly as a lack of perception of the divine plan and the divine order, which is the proper place and distribution of all things in the universe. Stealing is an unlawful separation or taking away of something from its present cycle without placing it in a cycle wherein the result is expressive of divine order. It is defined as unlawful because it is found to be in violation of the divine plan. So transferring something, that's a lawful separation of something from its present cycle and placing it in a different cycle. Stealing, which is rooted in lust, is a unlawful separation or taking away of something from its present cycle without placing it in a cycle wherein the result is expressive of divine order. So we give the example. If I take water from a stream and drink it, I've effected a transference of energy. This transference is in harmony with the divine plan, for the energy will rejuvenate my person and later be recycled by nature without imbalance being generated. The water was separated from the nature cycle of evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and placed into the human cycle of digestion, rejuvenation, excretion. After excretion from my person, it returns to nature. This is lawful. It is transference, truly cyclical. If through misplaced anger, misplaced anger now, not normal anger, but misplaced anger, I murder a human being, murder, not killing, but murder a human being, I've caused a separation of energy, his soul from his physical body. Yet a misplaced anger has caused me to be indifferent to the circumstances within which I have now placed this soul energy into the ancestral cycle. Lust blinds me from the perception of the divine plan. Thus, the separation of the soul from body in this instance is not expressive of divine order. It is unlawful. It is still. If Goddess God, which is Amen, Net Amen, came into being in the forms of the things it created after having laid a foundation in order, then the life, death, rebirth cycle is a cycle used by Goddess God or Amenet Amen as a mode of transference, recycling of the life force. If we are Goddess God or Amenet Amen in essence, essentially, talking about the essence of our being as a drop from the great being, then we have the responsibility and the right to facilitate transference if said transference or sacrifice is expressive of divine order and in harmony with the divine plan. Acts never create karma. Lust itself is its only creator. It is a mental phenomenon. So we're talking about the difference between murder and justified killing. Amenet Amen used the life, death, rebirth cycle as a cycle of transference or recycling of life force. We have the right and responsibility to engage the transference of the life force or sacrifice if it's expressive of divine order. That not only means a sacrifice or ritual sacrifice, it also means the killing of our enemies. So if somebody comes to murder you and you kill them in self-defense, that's not something to be remorseful about. That's divine. That's your responsibility. You don't just allow somebody to kill you, turn the other cheek, all that kind of nonsense. It is your responsibility to kill the person who's trying to murder you. That's your responsibility. That's your divine responsibility. The whites and their offspring want us to associate killing in and of itself with evil and to turn the other cheek and all that nonsense so that they can continue to control our people. They want to be able to murder us with impunity and force us to have a psychological revulsion with regard to any form of us striking out and killing those who murder us. But of course, we're stopping that now. So we're talking about, so that's what we're talking about, transference. When we put transference dash sacrifice, so when you start thinking about sacrifice in that point, in that regard, you're talking about a transference of a life force energy from one cycle to another cycle. Transference, if it's a lawful separation and movement from one cycle to the next. Murder or stealing is an unlawful separation of an entity from one cycle to the next. When you understand sacrifice as transference, a lawful separation, then you can engage that process in harmony. Now, okay, so I just want to go through real quick and see if there were any comments in the chat room that I missed as we were going through. Okay, and one person was talking about the attack on Africanism in Brazil and so forth, and you said you saw that recently, and I saw some information actually as well, some news reports on that recently, and that, of course, not only in Brazil, it's always been the case, of course, in North America with regards to, for example, like New Orleans voodoo and juju and hoodoo and things like that. In America, of course, in the Caribbean, South America, wherever we are, there's been an attack. Anything that happens negative to black people, the whites and their offspring jump out immediately and blame it on ancestral religion. For example, when the whites and their offspring bombed Haiti and made it appear that it was an earthquake, but really they were just bombing the place along the fault lines to create what appears to be an earthquake. When they detonate explosives along fault lines, they do that on purpose, or they detonate explosives near the seashore and cause what appears to be a tidal wave, a tsunami, or whatever, and then they say it was just an act of nature and that kind of nonsense. But in reality, they're causing these things. Or, for example, in New Orleans, in so-called Hurricane Katrina, after hurricane was already gone, days later, then they specifically wired and detonated bombed the levees, causing the floods to come and flood the Ninth Ward and everything. They did that deliberately. They lied to the people, of course, and said it just happened to flood because it was a hurricane, or they lied to the people about Haiti and said it just happened because it was an earthquake and the people died and so forth, when in reality the whites and their offspring did it. But then they turn around and blame it on voodoo. So you'll find white politicians, other individuals talking about, on television, online, talking about was because they practice voodoo and they're worshiping the devil that God struck them with a earthquake in Haiti. And the reason why Hurricane Katrina was hit, because the people openly practice voodoo, which is devil worship, down in New Orleans, and that's why it was such a major disaster and so forth. When the cracker, of course, is the one who created the disaster. And they're trying to direct people away from embracing ancestral religion. And then you, of course, have ignorant Negroes, Christians, Muslims, Hebrews, and others, Moors, and so forth, who repeat that nonsense. And sometimes they just come out and say it because they're so conditioned with that idiocy and pre-programmed like parrots, slave parrots, that they automatically start saying, oh, because they practice voodoo, that everything is happening negative to them. The only thing that happens negative is when we embrace the whites and their offspring, their culture, and their pseudo-religions. When we reject them, eradicate them and their culture and their fake religions, we don't have these problems. So this is why we went through that Famine Stela, to show why we are starving, why we are in famine, and so forth, and what we need to do as laid out, established as a precedent by our ancestresses and ancestors, to reconnect with them, reconnect with the Obosom, restore order to ourselves. This has been going on for thousands of years. This has been our protocol, our process. This is an ancient example or exposition of the process and protocol of Sankofa. That's what this Famine Stela or Stele is, in a great regard, to a great regard. So we going through that. So we went through the whole piece about, that's what real sacrifice is, and the political reason. The only reason you hear anybody speaking against blood sacrifice, the whites and their offspring, is purely political, because they don't want you to associate killing with the capacity to get in harmony with order through killing, because then you would naturally transfer sacred knowledge to killing your enemy to get in harmony with divine order, and then it's over for them. So always remember that. There is a piece also, you read about ancient Kemet, they talk about retainer sacrifices. And they'll say, well, it appears to be there was some evidence of retainer sacrifices in the early part of Kemet, and then it seems to stop in the early dynastic period all of a sudden, and then you don't see any more. Retainer sacrifices is dealing with the king dies, and then a number of people, all of a sudden, they see the graves of a number of his servants with him. So they say either the people were killed, or the people poisoned themselves and they went willingly so that they can serve the king in the ancestral realm just like they served the king in the physical realm. And they'll say, hey, that's they were killing people, strangling people, and so forth. And sometimes they'll say, well, people went willingly because they really wanted to serve the king. King was seen as a child of the divinity anyway, and they wanted to go with him. And they're in reality, and then some people will say, well, that's all a lie, and they're just trying to, put something negative on ancient Kemet, saying we were killing our own people, and that's a barbaric practice. Of course, the whites and their offspring bring that out, because anytime they bring out anything negative about ancient Kemet, when somebody hears, the average person doesn't study anything about Kemet or Egypt, they see one of us talking about Kemet or having some Medusa or hieroglyphics on our T-shirts or something like that, or taking on a name, the first thing they think about is misinformation, thinking idolatry is evil, so they say, oh, those people were worshiping the devil, oh, those people were worshiping the animals, oh, those people were killing all of their, the king would kill all the men, women, and children who worked for him whenever he died so he could take them against their will into the spirit realm. So these are the only things that they remember. That's the only things that they're fed. So then they say, well, if that's what ancient Kemet was about, why would you want to have anything to do with it? I don't want to be associated with it at all. And that's how they teach in reality. And then some of our people recognize that politically. So then they make the leap saying, well, if that's the reason they're doing it politically, then in reality that practice never happened. In reality, it's both things. On one hand, the whites and their offspring are putting forth that information because it's a political attack on the people. At the same time, there were times in the past, and you'll see in the earliest dynasty, you'll see some evidence of some people being poisoned, whether they poisoned themselves or not, and being buried with the king and so forth. You see that, and then all of a sudden, in the first dynasty, it stopped, and then you don't see it anymore. You'll also find in the Akhan tradition and some other traditions on the continent in certain areas, some of these people are still engaged in that nonsense, where they will kill people when the king dies to have their spirit go with them. And some of them will try to hide it and pretend like they're not doing it, but when you communicate with certain people, they are still doing it, killing innocent people to have their spirits go with the king after they make their transition. So then when we come out and attack that foolish practice, then the Negro who had just got involved in African culture got excited about it. Then they go to the continent and find out that's still going on. Then they come back and they're embarrassed and they want to hide it. They want to keep it on the low, pretend like it's really not happening, and they only tell people later on who also eventually visited the continent or something like that. They'll share it with them and it becomes a little cabal of people who are hiding information about the culture because they're too embarrassed to tell the truth. When somebody exposes them and says, yes, some of our people are still engaged in that nonsense, then they'll say, well, you're using your Western mind to, analyze traditional culture, and you have to get out that Western mind state. These fools are out of their mind. The reason why it stopped in the first dynasty thousands of years ago in Kemet is because the Obosom stopped it. It was never a practice or directive from the Obosom for people to be killed along with the king or engage in human sacrifice or retainer sacrifices or whatever when the king dies. That's never been the case. Anytime anybody engaged in that in the past, they were going against the Obosom. Anytime they engage in it today, they're going against the Obosom, going against divine order. And some of these fools on the continent are still doing that, and some people are fearful about speaking out against it. Most of them don't engage in that, but you have some fools still doing it, and especially you can get some detailed information to some extent among some Akhan people on the continent who are still engaging in that nonsense. The Obosom despise that practice. This is one of the reasons why, just like we read in the story of the Famine Stela, people getting out of harmony with the Obosom, then the people suffer. When you start seeing the people engaged in really practices that were established and made part of the fabric of the culture through the invasion of the whites and their offspring, and then we incorporate that and make it part of the culture, when we start doing that, then we begin to suffer. So when you see these intermediate periods in Kemet, where you have 1,000 years of of rule, and then all of a sudden there's an intermediate period for a few centuries or something, and there's political instability, chaos, and so forth, and then the Middle Kingdom comes, then there's an intermediate period of political chaos that lasts for 100+ years, and then the New Kingdom comes forward after that, and the third intermediate period, when people start getting out of harmony with the divinities, then the people suffer, the Obosom pull back, and now the people begin to suffer if you're engaged in nonsense. That happened in the past in ancient Kemet. It happens today. So people who are engaged in foolishness today, whether it's that retainer sacrifice nonsense or something else, then you'll see it manifest in the culture. You'll see the people are suffering in the culture, notwithstanding what the kings, queen, mothers, and some other people will say about the culture, like, oh, we're independent, we are the great this nation or that nation. The whites and their offspring are still controlling the economy of the nation, even though they're not controlling, quote-unquote, the politics. The whites and their offspring still have you call yourself a traditional priest. The priest is a king, queen, mother, proud of yourself and everything else, but you got an English name as well as a traditional name. You have a cracker hanging up on the wall calling them the Son of God, and you're going to church, but then you're also engaged in traditional practice. A handful of the people are doing okay financially. A larger group of the people are suffering financially, and you're running the whole country according to you. So what's really happening is our people are still incorporating white nonsense, and it manifests. The disorder in the culture is a manifestation of that. There's never a time where the Obosom, your Okra, in your Okra, your soul, your divine consciousness, encoded within that is your Nkra and Nkrabe, your function that you are to execute in the world. Your function is never, you don't come into the world to execute the function of being a sacrifice for somebody else when they make their transition. That's not your function. So when we engage in nonsense like that, we're rejecting the culture, no different than when somebody starts embracing Christianity. That's not part of our function. Or embracing the whites and offspring, that's not part of our function. So when we get out of harmony with order, then we create suffering within our nation, not just individually, but collectively. And some of our people are engaged in that. So we have to cut the foolishness out of the culture. And we have the capacity to identify idiocy, nonsense in the culture, expose it, and eradicate it. No matter what a Negro from the continent says who thinks that they're traditional, their credentials, lineage, all of that means absolutely nothing. The only thing that's important is what's true, what's correct, what's right, what's wrong. We're in harmony with order. We have ancestresses and ancestors. We have our Obosom. We are not dependent on them for anything with regard to the culture at all. We've been here for hundreds of years without any help. So we're not dependent on anybody. So if a Negro tries to come and tell you, you need to do this, you need to listen to us, and you don't have the capacity to assess what we're doing, that's a Negro that's out of his mind. So we don't have time to even entertain that nonsense. If it doesn't comport with what our own ancestresses and ancestors, our blood relatives are telling us, and the Obosom that come into the world with us are telling us, then to hell with anything anybody has to say from the continent or otherwise. So we need to understand that and be strong in that and reestablish our culture based on firm foundations, which goes back to our ancestresses and ancestors of our own blood circle, just as King Jasaru went back to the firm foundation. Like he said, he remembered back to a time when he had an advocate with Tahuti and with Imhotep, and he went back to the house of life, the Per-Ankh, and got the ancestral wisdom, which propelled him to go to the shrine of the Obosom and communicate directly with the Obosom. What do you have to say about this, and what do we need to do? And he followed the dictates and directives of the deity himself. That's how you reestablish culture. That's how you reestablish order. And that's what we need to do right where we are on this region of Asase Afua, the Earth Mother. Okay, so 5 minutes left in the live stream. If we do go into overtime for a few minutes after 11 o'clock, the only way you can listen after 11 is if you call in on the phone. You have 4 minutes, a little bit over 4 minutes to call in. The number is 657-383-0635, 657-383-0635. Okay, and may I say for that reminder. And may I say for the compliment in the room. All right, so, okay, so there was another question. I'm not sure if you already answered the question already. Do we retain the same gender when we reincarnate? May I say? So, yes, we do. So you have a Nkra, you have a Nkra and Nkrabia, the male and female aspect of your divine function. We look at the Okra complex, the soul of Akhan, that particular book. And it has the brain on the front with the cerebral cortex and the cerebellum and the two hemispheres, and we show that Nkra and Nkrabia, like associated with the right and left hemispheres of the cerebral cortex, the function you're to execute in the world and the manner in which you are to execute that function without creating disorder in the process. That's what's encoded within your soul, your divine consciousness. And that includes what gender you will be and what Obosom is going to govern you, and you come into the world like that. And when you make your transition, you're the same. If you're a male here, you're the same male spirit that somebody can see. When you pour libation and you come as an ancestral spirit to them, you don't come as a woman. Gender begins in the spirit realm. It starts off with Aminet and Amen. They're not just, universal, unisex energies. They're male and female. When you see an ancestral spirit, you see a male and female. And when that ancestral spirit enters the womb, it is that male or female energy that causes the male aspect of the physical anatomy to manifest at some point, or the female aspects of the physical anatomy to manifest at some point because a male or female energy entered the womb. This is why it's so foolish and idiotic for Negroes who are trying to say that originally there were only women on the planet, or the black woman is God, and just like it's foolish to say the black man is God and there was really only men on the planet. Both of those positions are foolish. But some people are taking it further and saying, well, all babies begin female and sex doesn't begin until later into that process and all that. But then the same fools who say that are the same fools who claim to be spiritual and talk about the ancestress as an ancestor. Well, if you can communicate with an ancestor or ancestress and it's a female ancestor, a female spirit, or a male ancestor, male spirit, then there's gender in the spirit realm. So when that gender spirit enters into the womb, it's still the same gender. It doesn't become a different gender just based on what happens when the mother eats a certain thing and it's a male spirit and it's going to come out as a female because you ate the wrong foods. It's nonsense. So, but before we get further into that, for the people who cannot stay on, we will be back on tomorrow with the Gua Marketplace. Baba Jason, who's the owner of Just Right Technologies, IT business, will be talking about his business. So come in and check us out for that. For the individuals who came in a little bit later, if you check out our publications page, the NHOMA page on Odwirafo.com, ODWIRA.com. We released 3 new books a little bit over a week ago. One is Off the Origin of the Term Yoga, Karakasa, the Origin and Nature of the Chakra. Also, Nyonkumpon and Nyonkumpon, Ra and Ra'et. And then Odomakoma, Fedriampong, which is Atim and Kepra. Go into detail about that. Those 3 books, each one is $9 for the softcover versions. Now we have 13 books total in softcover. They range between $8 and $11. One book is $8. About 6 of them are $9. 5 of them are $10, and 1 is $11. So we also have that special where you can order 10 books and you get 30% off. So instead of 10 books for $96, it's 10 books for $66. Also, 13 books you can buy all together for $86, which comes out to about $660 a book. So go to Odwirafo.com for that. And for people who want to be distributors, you can do the same thing. We have a program whereby you can purchase the books wholesale and sell them, on your own, retail to friends, family, coworkers, other people you're connected with. And the books basically cells themselves. We print on our own printers in-house, in color, all the vivid images from Kemet and other things, the Medutu hieroglyphics and so forth. People can see that information and get stimulated by it and interested and learn about the information that we're talking about in detail here. So, and of course that we sell the softcover versions, of course the ebook versions of all 13 of our books. We actually have 18 books, 13 in softcover. More will be coming forward. All the ebook versions are free downloads of all of our books and publications. The softcover versions we sell to generate revenue so that we can continue to give away the free books, also to do free presentations in different cities. Every city we've gone to, we do not charge an admissions fee. It's always free to the community. And we always give away a free copy of one of our softcover books to everybody who attends. So people come to a free presentation. They also walk away with a free copy of one of our books in order for us to continue to be able to do that. And, of course, to have the shows and everything else. The sale of our softcover publications funds these free trainings and workshops and information and so forth. We also have the domestic abuse program and the substance abuse abstinence piece. Those are free trainings as well. So support us by purchasing the softcover versions of our books. And again, they're only between $8 and $11 on Odwirafo.com, ODWIRA, F is in free, O.com. And you'll love the information. The people you share with will love the information, including if you decide to sell the books to people or if you just show them or purchase them for a gift for children as well as adults. But it also assists us in what we're trying to do and going to continue to do to give this free information out to our people wherever we are in the world. All right. So just want to make sure there's no questions on the phone line. Okay. So so what we were saying, so that whole notion of there's no gender or there's no color in the ancestral realm is foolish, and it comes directly from the white snare offspring. It's politically motivated to make us try to reject who we are and make us try to blend in with the white snare offspring and not recognize them physically as our enemies, spiritually as our enemies. They are spirits of disorder when they are discarnate. They are repulsive to our ancestresses and ancestors and us. And when they are incarnate, physically, they are repulsive physically and spiritually to us as well. So either way, in both realms, they are still spirits of disorder. They want to try to wipe that from our memory and say, well, when we come back, we're just, totally unaffected, unconditioned, no gender, no race, spirit doesn't have any color. That's foolish. Color originates in the spirit realm. If you can see an ancestral spirit, they're not just look like a blob of water. You can see their features. You can see what they look like. You can feel their energy. You can tell that they're masculine or feminine. They manifest spiritually first and then take up residence in a physical form that comports with their spiritual configuration. So that's reality. So yes, when you return, you're given an akra, you're given a function and so forth. If you are a male spirit and you were fashioned that way by Kunwem, you are fashioned on your spirit and your soul, fashioned by that divinity as a male, then you're going to incarnate in the world as a male. When you make your transition, you're still a male spirit. You go into the ancestral realm and live as a male spirit. Then when it's time for you to return generations later, after your people have been pouring libation to you for generations on earth, generations later, 10 generations later or something, time for you to return, you are still that same male spirit that returns through the womb. And if you were a female spirit, you're the same female spirit that returns through the womb. You don't go from the ancestral realm and then once you get into the womb, you transform into a female spirit. It doesn't work that way. That's what the white snare offspring want us to believe, so we will have no anchor or foundation in our identity. They push dissexuality to homosexuality because that's their nature as perverse entity. That's white Europeans, white Asians, white Hindus, white Hispanics, white Latinos, white Latinas, white pseudo-Native Americans, white Asians, and so forth. the whites and their offspring, non-black people, that they are spirits of disorder without an Okra, without an Okrawa, without a Ka, a Kaet, which is what distinguishes them from us, and they want us to move in that perverse direction, whether it's through dissexuality, gender confusion, various forms of gender confusion and dissexuality, which is a manifestation of that, as well as identity confusion, trying to say, well, you know, what's underneath is what's important, and we're all the same spiritually. We are not all the same spiritually. They are perverse, disordered spirits called in Samai Bon, meaning evil, disorder, and in Samai Pa, good ancestral spirit. If we were all the same spiritually and it's just all the same energy, then there wouldn't be any designation for evil ancestral spirits or discarnate spirits and good ones. And of course, throughout our culture and through our experience, we can experience those corrupt, disordered, discarnate entities as well as the ones who are in harmony with order. And we can see them, we can see their identity, we can see their gender, we can see their color. So, okay, and there was another question. Says Odwirafo, in regards to the services that are being offered, donations are accepted, correct? Yes, so we also accept donations. So it's not only with you can definitely purchase a softcover book, but even if you give a donation, if you make a donation of $15 or more, we will send one of our books anyway. But yes, we do accept donations. And just so people know, for those who make a donation, please remember, if you don't have your address in PayPal, add your address, because it was a couple of people made a donation, and then we checked, and they didn't have their address in PayPal, so we need to know the address to send the book. I know sometimes with the donation piece, they don't include the address because it's a donation. So make sure you put the address in there, or we'll just send you an email, but make sure you put the address in there so we can send you your book. But yes, if you make a donation of $15 or more, we will send you one of the 13 softcover books. If you make a recurrent donation, which some people have done, like a couple of people made a $15 recurrent donation, meaning you make a donation in PayPal, there's a box right next to the amount that says, check this box if you would like to make it concurrent or monthly. You check that box, that means PayPal will donate to us on your behalf $15 a month, and you can stop it whenever you want to. So for example, a couple of people did the $15 a month donation, so every month they're basically sending us automatically $15, but we will send a copy of one of our books every month, so you'll get a book in the mail every month. We have 13 books right now, so for at least the next 13 months, you get a new book every month. Within the next couple of weeks, we're going to have a few more books out. We have a couple that are already written that we have to put together, but then we have one that we're actually in the process of writing, so that'll be a new publication. So within the next few months, of course, it'll be more than 13. It'll probably be closer to 20. So if somebody did a $15 a month recurrent donation, for example, then you know definitely for the next 13 months, you'll get a new book in the mail every month. But by then, it'll really be probably 20 books. So for the next 20 months, you'll get a free book, a new book every month for the next 20 months. So yes, and you can donate whatever amount you would like to donate. You can do that. And again, when we talk about the free services, that includes presentation. So when we've gone to Connecticut, we've gone to Baltimore, of course, D.C., North Carolina, Louisiana, Tennessee, Virginia, Texas, Michigan, Chicago, different places, Georgia, so different places, but whenever we go to a place and do an event, we do not charge a speaker's fee to organizers for the event, and we don't charge an admissions fee for people attending our events. They should be able to get our ancestral culture and wisdom for free. It's our birthright, it's our inheritance, so we don't charge for that. And we also give away a free copy of one of our softcover books to everybody who comes out. And so far, we've been able to do that at every event that we've had over the past year. We've given away over 350 copies of our softcover books for free at our events, and we're going to keep that going. So if you want us to come to your city, of course, contact us via the website, Odwirafo.com, ODWIRA, F as in free, O.com, and, hit us up via the contact us section, and we can get that, locked in place for a presentation in your city. Okay, so that was one question. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything else. And, okay. All right, so it looks like we can end it right here. We just wanted to go through that stele, show how it relates directly to our people today in our ritual practices, and how we can utilize that information, show that it's actually a protocol for Sankofa, the ancient Sankofa protocol. Right in that text, the whole text is that very explicit, very detailed, and also the nature of sacrifice, transference as sacrifice in harmony with divine order, as well as these various certain ritual practices that are engaged in now that are not part of divine order that we can identify something wrong with. And when your crowd's telling you there's something wrong with something that's being promoted as ancient ancestral culture, and you know it's not, then you don't engage in it. It doesn't matter what the people say. There are many infected so-called elders and eldresses and priests and priestesses. The majority of them are on the continent. And then, of course, you have those here as well who are infected, engaged in foolish pseudo-ritual practices that have been practiced for a couple of hundred years in certain areas, but it's still nonsense. Just like the Obosom outlaw so-called retainer sacrifices or human sacrifices and so forth, it's the same thing here. So just like on the continent, somebody engages in that. Most of the people do not. Some people sneak around and still do it. Then you look at the condition of their society. It's corrupt, it's fractured, and it's dominated by the whites and their offspring. You look at us, because some of our people are doing the same thing. We're doing sacrifices every day here in America. Over 400,000, close to 500,000 abortions in the black community every year. That's a human sacrifice. We're paying the whites and their offspring, some white so-called doctor, to kill one of our ancestresses and ancestors, plus 500,000 plus per year. In 10 years, that's 5 million black people who have been murdered or sacrificed. That's human sacrifice. They're sent into the womb. They come into the womb with a specific function or purpose, and then we pay the white doctor to kill them. We give money to the white doctor, and then they kill the child. We're engaged in human sacrifice on a higher level on a regular basis than any time in ancient Afuraitkaitnit ever. Nobody was killing 500,000 of their people every year, paying for them to get killed. That just was not happening. And then we wonder why there's all kinds of disorder in the community. These spirits that are discarnate, once they're separated unlawfully, that's a murder. It's not a transference. It's just unlawful separation from the body. Those spirits are separated. They're angry, full of anxiety and so forth. They're causing problems with the mother, the father, the family. Then sometimes they return and they come back and they're angry spirits and grow up angry because of what's happened to them. And they have conflicts with the parents and conflicts with the grandparents and conflicts with everybody else. A lot of these things are going on. We need to understand what we're actually engaged in and why the whites and their offspring set up Planned Parenthood centers all over the country and wherever we are in the world. Yes, it's part of genocide. That's the number one piece. But it's also the whites and their offspring understand that when we murder our ancestresses and ancestors, those spirits that are discarnate cause all kinds of problems, emotional, mental, sometimes psychological, spiritual imbalances in the people who engage in these processes, and it keeps a great deal of instability and confusion and just anxiety within the community as long as these spirits are hanging around. That's the other reason why Planned Parenthood was put in place. These crackers are studying the so-called occult. That, of course, is nonsense, but they do understand one thing, the idea that when you pay to get your ancestresses and ancestors killed, you're going to cause problems for yourself. And those spirits are avenging themselves upon you, and that causes all kinds of confusion in our community. So that's the other reason they're doing it. They're doing it for genocidal purposes, but also to create perpetual confusion intergenerationally within our family through these discarnate spirits. So we've been engaged in these practices. We need to get back to our traditional culture, which is harmony with divine order. And the Famine Stela shows a roadmap for that and predicts and shows what will happen when you get back in harmony with order and reestablish an authentic expression of your ancestral culture rooted in ancient ancestral religious practices. So, again, Yedase, we thank you for tuning in. Please go to our publications page, the NHOMA page, NHOMA, NHOMA page on Odwirafo.com. If you have been thinking about obtaining some of our softcover books and it slipped your mind, please, of course, go ahead and do that today, and that will help us continue to do the programs and put out the programs and the information that we're putting out. We have a number of other books that we're working on that we just need the time to get back, get so we can publish and release and edit and so forth. And all those things take resources, of course. And also we're planning our schedule for the next few months of where we will be traveling, what cities we will be going to. So, again, that will also help for us to be able to go to different areas, of course, have these free events, and also cover the expense for venues when we go to a particular place and have to rent out a venue to have a presentation. We generate the revenue, we'll be able to cover those expenses, and the organizers won't have to cover the expense of venues if that's necessary, or even travel expenses. At some point, we want to get to the point where an organizer doesn't even have to cover our travel expense. We'll just be able to cover everything ourselves, do the free presentations, and organizers won't have to do anything but send the word out via social media. So, okay, Medase, send me that email. All right. Okay, so Yedase, we thank you again for tuning in, and join us tomorrow, same time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Egua Marketplace. And until then, Yebeshia, we will meet again. That's up.